Hi.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm actually super excited about this, Brandon. So I'm gonna try to tee it up a little bit and share why I'm so excited to pick your brain.
Okay.
Because I think everybody listening needs to know a little bit about your background, and then I'm excited to hear more about your story and all of this stuff. But
Okay.
for everybody listening, Brandon Laird, founder, CEO, president, chief pilot.
Chief pilot.
There's the title.
Yeah, there's a regulatory title for sure.
Chief pilot of Colorado Highland Helicopters. But more than that, a longtime friend of mine. You're a father, you're a business owner, you're a community leader, so many things. And I've been able to watch your journey. It's been cool because our paths crossed right when you first started Highland Heli. And it's been so fun to see your resilience and the things that you've overcome and the business challenges and just all of this stuff. I'm trying to think, well, we'll talk about how long ago that was. But anyway, all of that to say, I got to just share with you how excited I am to get to pick your brain, learn from you a little bit, and sit across the table from you and chat a little bit. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for having me. Same in some ways. We found each other through the early media, looking to reach out and get our name out there. And I think, seeing your journey, doing the things that you're developed and kind of coming into your own and working this program and kind of being more of a part of the community, kind of instead of the young, up and comers that we both were at the time. Right. So yeah, it's been fun to see from both sides.
Now we get to sit and swap war stories instead of dream stories. Right. But no, and where I want to start, because one of the things I think is one of my favorite things I get to talk to people about is when they've got a passion or, in your case, a really, how would I describe, your pilot licensure, but a very honed in and sort of niche skill set that then you've turned into an entrepreneurial journey and built a company out of it.
Yeah.
So do you mind walk me through those earlier days? Because I know you didn't just get your pilot license to start a company.
Sure. No, I'd been flying for some time. Let's see, I started out in San Diego. That's where I went to flight school, and then working out there, just kind of for the flight school, the normal kind of intro to the industry as a commercial pilot. Found some contacts there, branched into some private work. Eventually ended up at Maverick Helicopters in in Vegas, doing Grand Canyon tours. I did that for a couple of years. Ended up getting on with Tri-State Care Flight, an emergency medical company.
In Albuquerque, right?
No, that was out of Bullhead City, near Vegas. Bullhead City, they call it the Tri-State area, where California, Arizona, and Nevada come together. That was kind of the headquarters of the company, but the company had bases here in Colorado that I was interested in for the high altitude and the mountain environment, that sort of thing. So talked them into eventually, I'd wanted Durango, but they'd sent me to Montrose and kind of worked a deal that we'd get to Durango later, and they came through. So I was in Montrose for a bit and then came to Durango. That's where I met Dale. Dale had been working ambulance out of Albuquerque, and then had gotten herself moved around a little bit, but finally assigned to Durango. And so that's where we got together. So yeah, I'd been flying at that time, when I got here, 2012, I'd been flying for 6 or 8 years, something like that.
Yeah. For some reason, and maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but for some reason I thought that you were a flight pilot while Dale was a flight nurse. And you guys met on those crews, or?
Well, yeah, flight paramedic. If she
Thank
were
you.
around,
Paramedic.
she'd be correcting you very quickly on that.
Sorry, Dale.
She was a flight paramedic that had worked. Well, she'd worked ground-based ambulance out of Albuquerque, and then had gone to Care Flight as a paramedic, and what would be considered a flight paramedic, but then there's a certificate, an actual designation of their certificate that's a flight paramedic as well.
Got it.
Not required to start flying on an EMS crew, encouraged but not required. And then she acquired that later, working as a flight paramedic when she got that certification. But we met when she got moved to the Durango base as a medic.
And you were flying and she was being the medic.
Correct.
Yeah. How did that work? I just want to hear that story a little bit.
Well, so I'd only been there a short time, a few months or so, when she got assigned up there, and then I was assigned to basically familiarize her with the aircraft. So she was going through base familiarization and protocols and all the things that they do on the medical side, and then show her the aircraft and go through, because the aircraft that we flew here in Durango, Montrose, and Bullhead was the three type aircraft. The A-Star was only at those three bases of 25 bases or something that Care Flight had. So that aircraft was unique to those bases. So she'd flown out of Gallup, I think, and maybe another spot with the company, but
never with an A-Star.
Not with that aircraft.
Got it.
Yeah. So I was, familiarizing her with the aircraft. That's how we actually directly met, and then we started hanging out after that.
Right.
That was, interesting because when I worked at Maverick, I'd gotten on there. My original instructor, Sebastian Carter, had gone to Maverick and probably put in a word for me to get me there. And then he'd gone to EMS. And so when I started looking at EMS, I said, "Hey, Sebastian, what tips do you have for a new EMS pilot?" And he said, "Don't date the flight crew." So I immediately started
Rule
dating
number
the flight crew.
Yeah.
And
what do we say?
so
That's great.
Let's see, it went fine. As far as the company, there wasn't a whole lot of pushback in terms of we weren't in violation of any company policies or anything like that. There was a concern, that are you guys, willing to fly together? How are we going to schedule you guys? And we just told them, we don't care. Schedule us together. Don't schedule us together.
We're fine.
We don't care.
We're adults here. We're professionals.
Exactly. So, that carried through when we got pregnant and we had Brody, she and I had that discussion are we going to fly together?
Yeah, because that kind of changes risk analysis.
Yeah. And, we basically said, this was a high risk environment. We knew it when we got in, where, she trusted me as much as any of the other pilots and, rather be with me than as much or more than anybody else.
Yeah.
And so, we were willing to take that risk. And so we just never really broached it with the company. Not that the company didn't know we had a child, but
right.
We just never went any further.
You were never too worried about it.
Nope.
I meant to, in your intro, make a joke that you're the best helicopter pilot my best friend helicopter pilot that I know. Of all the
one helicopter pilots that I'm the best. Yeah.
But actually, that makes some sense though. Of you'd need to the trust factor there. We've flown together several times, and the one time when we flew over to Ouray, I was way out of my comfort zone. But it was really nice knowing the pilot, and
sure.
I was scared a little bit of the experience, but I was never worried about who was flying the helicopter or anything like that. So I can totally understand how you would almost maybe that would be a preference to fly together. Because the trust is there. Yeah,
comfort at least, or if it did go bad, at least we're together. So
right.
It'd be kind of terrible for our child, but
at least you'd be together.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you end up transitioning into the medical side of things or the EMS side of it? Because when you were getting your license, was that on the radar for you that'd be kind of what you'd want to do as a job? Not
necessarily. I mean, it wasn't off either. A lot of guys do kind of go in with I'm going to fly fire. I'm going to fly EMS. I'm going to fly whatever. And I didn't necessarily have a niche that I was headed for. I knew I didn't want to fly, exceptionally large helicopters, passenger transport category type aircraft. I wasn't real interested in gadgets and autopilot and the IFR environment, more like a airline transport type, job in a helicopter. So I knew it'd be smaller aircraft. I like the mountain environment, but, utility, fire, EMS, which did have the allure to me of the search and rescue angle, which is why, the EMS that I flew with the bases that I flew at was definitely, edging towards more of a search and rescue type base than a strictly, what we call HEMS, helicopter EMS.
Right.
Which is
just because of the nature of the location.
Yeah, primarily. Calls. And the company, they were open to that type of work more than some. For instance, the other side of the spectrum would be, major city helicopter, which is pick up maybe from a high traffic environment to avoid a long drive, even though it's not a long distance, right? But not really trying to secure a subject from an inaccessible place.
Right.
And then hospital transport, which is just, it's terrible for me. It's moving a dead guy from one spot to the next.
Not ideal.
I shouldn't say that out loud, but yeah.
This is a safe space, remember?
Yeah, sure.
Well, but because I think it's interesting and I want to just walk back to when you were initially getting your license and, kind of starting this whole journey. I mean, obviously, from there to where you are now couldn't be further apart. Yeah. And I'm just kind of curious if you had a bit of a vision or if you knew that you wanted to fly. Was there passion there, or what was the driving force?
Yeah, I mean, I like the helicopters. I like the physical, mental aspect of just, honing your skills as a pilot. I liked the, academic or, mental exercise of like understanding the aircraft from more of a, I went to school as an engineer. Physics and engineering was interesting to me. So understanding how the aircraft works, going through the aerodynamics, and teaching those aspects is something I really enjoyed. So I kind of got back to teaching by opening my own business. So I enjoyed those pieces of it. It was also, some guys are just like, God, they love to fly. We call them cyclic sluts,
Right.
And they're like, I'll do that for free. Like, shut
Just
no,
want to be in the
no,
air.
you won't.
Yeah.
Stop saying that. So, but yeah, they're just like driven by it, and I have passions like that with, more personal things like motorcycles.
I was going to say your motorcycle,
like that. But, I love to fly, but like, it's a job. Like if I wasn't, some of my guys, if I won the lottery, I'd put this helicopter on a boat, and I'm like, I'd be so far from helicopters. Like, they're a lot of work, and I've seen it from that perspective too. The work and all the stress and the things that come with especially the business ownership side. So it's not like a deep passion, like I just have to fly, but it is, an industry that I'm passionate about with the type of support that we provide, especially the EMS, the search and rescue angle, the teaching, bringing up, and kind of mentoring and helping and, helping secure the safety of the kind of the next generation of pilots, right? So I am passionate about those things, but, and then also I think just from like a business or entrepreneurial standpoint, my grandfather had taken over a construction business from my great-grandfather, whom I never met. Real young because great-grandpa died. And so my grandfather and his brother took over this grading and paving business that, basically, paved out California back in the 60s.
Right.
And so seeing that and just appreciating, the entrepreneurial spirit and the independence of, independent business ownership. And, they had quite a heyday at that time. So maybe it was a bit romanticized.
Yeah. We'll talk all about the freedom and independence here in a minute.
But so that was a driving force as far as, kind of separating from being a pilot to being a business owner.
Yeah, that was your grandfather.
My grandfather.
Was your dad an entrepreneur?
Well, no, he worked for the business. I mean, in that sense that he always worked for the
construction business.
Right.
Yeah, got it.
Right.
Yeah.
So
walk me through then, because it's funny because our stories are somewhat parallel, but with different timelines of, kind of, I don't know, working the climbing the corporate ladder, working all of the jobs, and then finally saying, all right, I'm going to go out on my own.
Right.
I want to know the thought process and sort of what that moment was like. And, I know that you and Dale obviously started it and you guys were working together too, but just kind of curious on what your guys' dynamics were and roles. Was somebody kind of leading the idea of saying, hey, we should quit our jobs and start a helicopter company in Durango? And what did that chapter of your life look like?
Well, that would have been her. She would have. I'm more of I like things to be a little more secure.
Right. That definitely would have been Dale.
It would have been her. However, the decision was kind of made for us. So we had kicked the idea around. We both had kind of talked about what my previous point, which like we saw my family do that. Her family had been farmers and they'd kind of lost that during, a downturn and was unable to continue that. And so, they had gone into just, back to the corporate life as far as her parents and whatnot. And so both of us kind of had an inkling to try to do something on our own. Both of us were, financially minded. Like we were always looking for, she had done several homes, I had done homes, remodeled. So we'd always kind of, we didn't just live on our check. We were looking for ways to kind of help
hustling.
ourselves and pulling something off. Establishing, some secondary income or some investment, something like that. So we talked about it on that level. We had kind of noticed some shortcomings, gaps in the services that were provided, right? The search and rescue being a big one, that was always, I won't say always, but historically primarily provided by the emergency medical companies. At that time was CareFlight and Flight for Life. Flight for Life's still here. CareFlight got absorbed by Air Methods, which services Flight for Life, so
Got it.
almost
Yeah.
by the same thing. And they would provide what they call search assist, not search and rescue, and it's it's good PR. It's good. It's a service that wasn't otherwise provided, so they're doing a good job in that sense.
It's better than nothing.
Right, but they just weren't. I mean, I wouldn't even say it like that. It's a little bit, it comes across maybe a little derogatory. That's
Right.
not the intent, but just like it's just not what they did.
Not their specialty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they would, and then the real downside was that then they get a patient on board that maybe needs to be recovered, not treated necessarily. So, you break your ankle on Mount Sneffels, sure, Flight for Life can find you and get you off of Mount Sneffels and take you to Mercy. And then your insurance company is going to say, what the hell are you doing? Right? So they don't see topography. So they'd say, hey, you got a 10-mile transfer, whatever it is, direct point to point.
That's how it works. That's
right.
how they look at it.
And so your bill is, whatever the, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000.
Yeah.
And the insurance company will go, denied, right? And now you're on the hook for this $50,000 for your broken ankle, and you're mad at the helicopter company, right? And the helicopter doesn't cost $50,000 an hour. What costs $50,000 an hour is the medical insurance and the medic and the nurse that's
stuff.
on board. Well,
Yeah.
it's the medical care or the ability to provide that level of medical care. So, helicopters are expensive, but not like that,
expensive.
right? That's an order of magnitude higher than what it should cost for a helicopter. But even though you maybe didn't use the services of that helicopter is capable and established and, set up for that service. So, that part was not so good. So we saw that shortcoming. We also saw a shortcoming in high altitude training for pilots. So it went from, the U.S. is a very litigious place especially for helicopters. And it went from this idea of, hey, things are litigious, we better make sure our pilots are top-notch and trained to fly in the mountains, to, yeah, that's kind of expensive. Let's pretend like flying in the mountains is no different, and you're a commercial pilot, so we'll just put that on you. And it almost always worked out.
I caught that.
So, we were trying to kind of reestablish high altitude training and kind of re-differentiate, that, hey, if you're going to fly at 10, 12,000 feet in a helicopter, let's help these guys get a little experience in it instead of, work it out on your own and trial and error. So,
Right.
So those are a couple gaps that we had seen and we talked about, filling. And it was, again, those are the areas of like passion for that industry that like, well, I really enjoy these pieces anyways. And we could put something together that it would be very niche and probably never huge, but it could be that we kind of fill that niche. So
Yeah.
that was the angle we were looking at. I had started to play. One of my old clients had bought a helicopter that would have been the right fit, and so I started looking at that, and he was, hey, I'm thinking of selling it, and okay, maybe we could get in on that. And we're trying to work that out. Where we're going to come up with, close to $500,000, and then CareFlight sold, and so
You're out of job.
not necessarily right out of the gate. I mean, there was some opportunity to be moved. It was Air Methods, which is a company that I personally wouldn't work for. So
And
I
at
was
this
kinda
point,
holding
you
out.
have 2 kids, 1 kid.
One.
But
Yeah, so-
you've got roots in Durango. At this
Yeah,
point,
we
and-
just bought a home. And we had a 1-year-old son.
Right.
And we liked Durango. We came here for a reason, and we both wanted to be here, not
Right.
just kind of followed the company here. So, I mean, the company had a base, but it was like we were driven to get
Purposely here, yeah.
And then we found each other here. So, yeah, we didn't really want to go anywhere. They'd offered to kind of, move us, but then that's where that company was reticent to deal with us as a married couple.
Sure.
So they were
Now
like,
there's some-
"Hey, we're not going to move you to the same base or whatever." Like, "Oh, you got to be kidding!"
Because now it's
so
all
now
like
we're trying to
yeah.
commute. Like, this is not good. So then, because of that, like I think that we just didn't get real good treatment as far as like base location choice. So then they started throwing out, you can go to Raton, you can go to Las Cruces, and I was like, So, nah, I don't think we're going to do that, So we ended up, neither of us took work with them, and, it's kind of the kick we needed to pull the trigger. So
Yeah.
that's when we bought the helicopter.
So, because I relate to it on several levels. When I quit my job, obviously we have roots here, and and it felt so weird for me because, and we knew each other when I was at that other job, but I had felt like I was walking away from everything I had worked for. It was a really weird, conflicting moment for me, where it's like I'm taking this leap, and I remember thinking, I hope I don't regret this because I've worked my tail off to get where I was, in that corner office and all that stuff that went with it. The difference though is I didn't have I run a digital agency. Like I didn't have a ton of startup costs.
Okay.
I had a risk.
Yeah.
I walked away from stability,
Established
and then
spot.
15 grand started my, nothing crazy in terms of like getting it up and running. And I think I had 2 or 3 months of savings.
Yeah.
And I was pretty confident that I could get enough to, cover my mortgage after a few months.
Mm-hmm.
A helicopter company, on the other hand, has got to have so much, I'll just call them barriers to entry in terms of startup costs. I mean, I can't even imagine what insurance is like, and then the actual helicopters and the hangar, and how did you guys approach that? And was there fear ever?
I mean, yeah, I think so, but it had its ups and downs as far as some of the things you mentioned we didn't encounter. So we had the huge cost of acquiring a helicopter, right, that we were able to scrape together and figure out, but we still owned a helicopter. So if the whole thing went belly up, sell the helicopter, kind of back where you started,
right.
So as long as it doesn't go real bad, which that happened later.
We'll get there. No, I'm just kidding.
We did have the helicopter. So yeah, it was a huge startup cost, but it wasn't like sunk cost. It was an asset investment that
right.
if it doesn't work out, we can sell the asset.
Right.
So that wasn't terrible. Thankfully, because of the training, so a lot of helicopter startups are contract based. They're trying to get fire contracts, trying to get government
and you're
contracts.
looking for work,
sure,
like, active flight work,
right?
Yeah.
Which requires certification, right? Which is onerous. A lot of time, slow. That's one of probably the most difficult things to deal with in our industry is the regulatory process.
I'm sure.
And so we were able to start training, which surprisingly, shockingly, has very little barrier to entry. Yeah, I was a flight instructor, a certified flight instructor from way back, like most pilots are, kind of as a, I kind of liken that to an internship.
It's kind of a stepping stone.
Yeah. Coming back to it later is less common, but also toot my own horn a little bit, but like more valuable, right? It's like, hey, those are the guys that are mentoring the new CFIs and things like that, and run a business that allow new CFIs to work at it, things like that. So I was coming back to it in that angle. And like I said, pretty low barrier to entry. Like get a helicopter, get it insured, start
and then you can
acquiring
start
students.
teaching.
Yeah. So we were able to start flying without a whole lot of infrastructure, if you will, or like behind the scenes work outside of just having to find the money to get a helicopter and get it insured.
Right.
So so that part was easier, better, and then like I said, we could always, if it wasn't working, we could turn the helicopter around without a whole ton of loss. So that part was better, and seemed to work out pretty quickly. We had a helicopter kind of sitting there for a little bit. That was pretty scary. But pretty quickly it started to work a little bit. And we just got, I'm going to say lucky, but I'm hoping that's not true. We fought helicopter problems for the last couple of years really badly. And I'm hoping that is the anomaly and not the streak of luck that I had on the front end.
Right.
Because the front end went really smooth and then it got really bad.
It's like, which one's
Yeah,
normal?
I'm hoping that the front one was the normal, not the current circumstances. But in any case, we were able to get through without, a whole lot of hitches and stuff for long enough to kind of get on our feet.
Right.
And Dale stayed working while went back to work on the ground ambulance in
Pagosa. Yep. Now it's all coming back.
Which is obviously a double-edged sword, but, it was able to get us through.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So early on, you guys were partnering in the business, but really you were kind of the day-to-day, you were running it, and then Dale was making at least a little bit of money, for to bridge things.
Yep.
Until
she was able to do a lot of the background work, and that's where, I have a little bit of like perfection paralysis, like, filling out an application and the background manuals for like a 135, which is the charter certificate, I will just like not tackle it, or when I do tackle it, it's just so onerous because I have to make sure it's perfect. And she was like,
she's an executor.
Here's the requirements. It meets the requirements. Ship it, And so she got us through a lot of that stuff that I, maybe wouldn't have gotten to.
Yeah.
So.
What's harder, learning to fly a helicopter or running a business?
Oh, the business for sure. Like, I'm still mucking through that.
Yeah.
Where I can teach anybody to fly a helicopter. They're steep learning curve. It's tough technically, but it's not.
Nothing like a business.
You just fly the damn helicopter.
Yeah.
The business is always something new.
At the risk of jumping too far ahead, but because I'm genuinely curious, if you had it to do all over again, and you could start the company and do the whole thing, or keep working. Weighing all the pros, all the cons, and we'll, I want to dive into some of those, but because and let me preface it actually a little bit, give a little context. As you know, and we've commiserated about this plenty of, business ownership is brutally difficult. And I've had times when the thought has crossed my mind of like, I don't know that I would do this again. Okay. But then I remember I've got the flexibility, I've got the freedom, and I also am proud of who it's turned me into.
Yeah.
Like I've grown too while I'm growing the business.
Sure.
And it's like you were saying it tongue in cheek, but seriously, of kind of like these two chapters with the smooth start and then the batch of bad luck is what I'll call it. And I don't know, I'm just kind of curious, like now, if when you're looking at this whole thing, do the pros outweigh the cons, just in terms of the business and like that side of it?
I don't yet have an answer for if I had to do it all over again, would I? But I think I can confidently answer I wouldn't go back to work.
That's an answer enough.
So
I think I share that answer of like brutally difficult, to build a business.
Yeah.
Still, though, way better than going back to punching a clock and having a like. I can't imagine if I had to ask for time off again.
Well, I mean, at least you might get it.
Yeah, true. Very true. Speaking of flexibility and
I mean, freedom. You get to make your own decisions, but you don't get a whole lot of time off. I think that one way or another, I was going to do something like this because right now I could consider going back and, picking up a paycheck and doing my 40 hours and, see you later. But like not as like with life reliance on that.
Right.
So, so it was always going to need to be something to break you out of that rat race. Right. Which I'm not sure I've done, but at least there's at
least you own the rat race.
Well, right. Or at least there's like, I'm not going to say light at the end of the tunnel, but like there's an opening somewhere.
Right.
Because there's no opening for just like a 9-to-5er.
Right.
I don't think. Right. Like
not like that. Not
right.
Not
like
level.
Maybe if you can get onto that high level corporate, whatever, if that's your game, but that was never me.
Get the gold watch.
Right. So, I think, it was always gonna be something, and I wouldn't go back to like, okay, I'm living paycheck to paycheck, and so there's that. I also feel like, and I hope that this doesn't just happen forever, but that like the business has an opportunity to expand or level up or whatever you want to call it, where, I don't know, like it just puts you on another plane where I don't think that like the stress goes away or that like all of a sudden you have all the free time in the world, but just that, maybe another step away from that like paycheck to paycheck thing of like, hey, the business is going to be okay if I'm not there every day.
Right.
Yeah,
no, I relate to that a ton. I always look at my life. It's funny as like, I joke that, but I'm serious. I'm trying to elevate my rock bottom. Mm-hmm. Like I'm trying to make my worst case scenario slightly less worse, so that if all hell breaks loose and I were to lose it all or whatever, that it's at least a little bit, elevated. Like I've had times, I mean, in this whole journey, the highs are so high, the lows are so low. And I've had times when I've been like, okay, this isn't going to work. And I've got to, go get a job. Well, at least I'd have this much, revenue or whatever. And like, I relate to that a lot of like, I don't know. It's almost like a little bit of a stepping stone where
definitely
now worst case scenario isn't zero. Worst case scenario is something slightly above zero at least.
I would even go beyond that at this point, or at least where I've kind of gotten myself to recently, is that the rock bottom is not really that bad. There's enough equity there that if I wanted to liquidate, I could I could be pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
The thing now is like back to the romanticism of, man, I want to see what this business can do. And I want to see where it can go. And I want to see if I can get myself back to a position where I'm doing the things that I enjoy and contribute most to the business instead of trying to wear every hat in the game. So, and being behind on everything perpetually. So that's kind of, rock bottom now is kind of where I currently am by choice.
Right.
Because I could punch out and go live on a boat.
And have a different, yeah.
But I'm not quite ready to do that. I'm not sure that that's the best example for my kids. I'm not sure it's the best example for myself. Like if I really, hold myself to the light, yeah, that'd be comfortable, but is that what I want?
Yeah.
And even if I might want that now or next year, am I going to want that in 10 years? Right. Well, I wish I would have seen what that could have done.
Yeah.
So, barring some catastrophic loss, that really resets the position that we're in, I'm almost there. That's where I do see light at the end of the tunnel. Like, hey, I think I could make this thing into something really cool, set myself in a position that I really appreciate, that the business really appreciates of me, and, get to kind of see where it goes. And I'm not quite there, but it's that I can envision being possible.
Yeah.
So that's...
You've survived catastrophic loss already, though. And multiple.
Sure. Yeah.
fronts.
It's always possible again, and you try to mitigate against it. But I just mean in terms of separating from the business. At any time, if I decided to liquidate right now, we're okay. But a major lawsuit or a major loss or whatever could change that.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, the business is healthy. It has assets. All my personal, I don't even want to use the word wealth, but just because that's lack of a better term. All of that is tied in equity, business assets.
Right.
I don't I drive an old truck.
It's a newer old truck.
It's new to me. Yeah. It's only 6 years old now. I don't live extravagantly. I don't really want to, but I have a pretty good asset situation, pretty good equity situation that I could draw from and go live comfortably. I'm just not sure I want to do that.
Yeah. Which I'm interested about, because just speaking of adversity and I don't know, overcoming all these things. One of the biggest reasons I've been excited to pick your brain has been the resiliency that I've been able to witness, through our relationship. I mean, I've known you for years, and I had mentioned just briefly now that you have overcome catastrophic loss on multiple fronts. And one of the things I want to hear from you about, without diving any deeper than you want to, but I think about how challenging this whole thing is. Like I said, it's kind of a recurring theme. We talk about it all the time. But mine's generally gone very smooth. I haven't had catastrophic loss, and I still barely am making it. Barely holding myself together enough to make this whole thing happen. I've witnessed you, two particular ones that come to mind. The incident at the airport and Dale, obviously. I've witnessed you sort of rise to the occasion isn't the right word for it, but I've been able to watch you sort of get it done. I don't know how to explain it better than that, but I'm sure that there's been things, I'm sure it hasn't always looked as strong and as stable as my opportunity to see into it. But I think about the responsibilities of a father, a business owner, an employer, all of these weights that are on your shoulder, and then out of the blue come these other these other extreme adversities. And I would love to learn from you and hear from you how you've approached them and how you've managed to sit here and joke with me now in October 2024. Because very sincerely, Brandon, it's been remarkable to watch, and I just want to hear kind of how you've maintained the strength that you've done.
Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky there, right? I mean, it's it could easily go another way. It does some days, but I think, every business has, challenge and strife and just overwhelming work and sort of what have I got myself into, and that separation from, what you do as a professional skill, for instance, flying for myself versus running a business, which is the bulk of what I'm doing now. World. Right. And so there's always difficulty there that we all see as, business owners, entrepreneurs. But yeah, I had two, major issues that were, kind of had ended up, being somewhat public facing because you just can't
Nothing we
there's
could do
no way to
about
get
it.
around it, right? So the one being the accident with the aircraft, which was like, on one level, it's nice that it wasn't, basically my program. So in a way, it doesn't put a dark mark on our safety record or things like that. It was, for some background, it was an FAA designated examiner. So not the FAA strictly, but essentially an examiner to evaluate my pilot candidates. That's authorized by the FAA to do so in the same way that I'm authorized to instruct pilot candidates. So, independent of the FAA, but he, I don't want to say too much publicly, but, was the actions were inappropriate and should not have happened and resulted in an accident that he caused. But the result was I lost my primary aircraft, on the front page of the paper
With
at
the
the airport.
logo on the bottom. I mean, yeah.
It was like, oh boy. So, so that, was tough. I think that, actually I got I feel the support from the community, people seem to recognize that. All of a sudden I thought, oh man, people don't know us. And now our helicopter's on its side on the runway. They're going to be like, who's this Yahoo? And instead I got, yeah, we've been watching you and, we can't believe that happened to you from the outside. And it was kind of a relief, oh crap, I don't have to come out with this whole PR campaign that we're not out crashing our stuff.
Right.
And
gosh, because I remember I was at the office here. It was right before Thanksgiving, and I think we were going to go. We were set to ride the Polar Express or something. There was something going on, and I remember I was freaking out. Here at the office, kind of going down that PR
right.
path. Well, remind me to come back to it, but I want to talk again about the community and the surprise of.
Yeah,
we've been watching you and support and stuff. So, but we can tell that. But
so
I just think that
was
an
a relief.
Observation.
That was nice. And I think kind of helped me to be a little bit more supportive back or give back to the community that I thought was unfortunately, you hear the few people that are upset the loudest.
Of course, negativity,
stupid helicopter and whatever, and you feel maybe some support in the distance, but then when that comes out, you're like, oh man, here comes all their ammunition,
and support.
And instead, it was the other way around.
That is
mostly
so cool.
Hey, we see what you're doing, and we think that sucks that happened. I was like, oh. Okay, good.
No, that's so. In fact, just quickly, because I want you to keep going down this path, but I think that's so interesting because. We both live in a world where no news is good news.
Right.
And the bad news is so loud.
Right.
And, I have times when it impacts me to the point sometimes where I have real self-doubt and real imposter syndrome, for lack of a better term, where it's gosh, I'm not, people don't understand how hard I'm working or, whatever. And what a great reminder that it's there. It's just quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just love that. I just wanted to touch on that real quick.
Yeah. So that was helpful and, helped us get through it. And then, obviously it was real. We didn't really experience much loss of business or faith in our clients or, anything like that. We had a lull in terms of, an asset to be able to provide a service.
Yeah.
But, we got out of that. Okay. Insurance came through and paid what the aircraft was insured for, which is not what it was valued at and what I put into it. And there was definitely a sentimental aspect to the aircraft. It was the one we got started and all that.
Yeah.
Crunched it. So, and now I have multiple aircraft that we're always, doing something to, fixing, chasing something, making something better, right? Fixing something broken, whatever. And it's not, none of them are as
nearly
important
as
as the one that you were I was there late at night with the mechanic, touching up the paint while he fixed something.
Well, and there's and there's there's all these cool photos of
right.
you and Dale in the blue helicopter. I mean,
so that was tough and definitely, didn't help. Contributed to the next issue we had, which is loss of Dale. So she'd been struggling for a while, and a new business and a new baby. By then we'd had Gray, and she was at some point still working on the ambulance. When she was pregnant with Gray, I think maybe a little bit after we had Gray. That was right through COVID. So that was just a terrible time for her. And the business was I don't want to say struggling, but it was definitely taking a lot from us. I was there a lot trying to just make it all work. And then loss of the helicopter, and she would just it was a lot of things, but, it just kind of caught up with her. And so obviously that was like not just like an acute event that had been, causing stress with us for a long time,
Right.
And so, when Dale passed Christmas of 22, it was like, now what? Like, how do you run a business with 2 kids by yourself? And,
Go ahead.
I don't know what I was going to say, just that, and obviously it's like family had to come first. And, but at that time, by then the business had been running long enough and I did have some people there. By then it wasn't just me. And so, those people really, I got the support from my, I don't know what you call it, local community, like not, that's, what you'd say for Durango, but like from my guys,
Your core community.
my internal group. Yeah. And then, my family just came and helped with home. And then, I was running it on my own for a while, and that's where like I learned something too. Was just like I was just, autopilot, 100 hours a day. Get the kids up, get them to school, get myself to work, do what I could, go back, pick up the kids, get them home, get them fed, get them in bed, get myself in bed, do it again, and trying to run a business during school hours. So that was falling behind. I was, falling behind with the kids, the house, like just, it wasn't going to last, and I was just trying to do it anyway. Until I, was burnt out, and I was like, all right, I'm out. I don't care what happens. Like, it's gonna work. We're just gonna do something different. And again, the guys at work stepped up. Like, I want this role. I want that role. I'll help out with this role. And so we've just been basically doing that now for about a year.
Yeah.
And it's like starting to come together.
Which, yeah, and I want to talk about that too. But I'm just so curious about. Because I relate to like that, I don't know, I can see how these things would happen and you would sort of just like charge through it. You had mentioned sort of those 100-hour, weeks of trying to be the dad and the business owner and, God forbid you had time to take care of yourself too, or, whatever, but all these things. Walk me through that transition, because I know that there's been quite a bit of growth, that's happened since then in those 2 years of where I feel like you've got a little bit of a different perspective on the business, and you've got these things in place with just sort of priorities and things like that. But walk me through sort of how that transitioned, and when did you realize that you can't just that Brandon can't do it all, and then how you dealt with that, because I'm just so I admire it so much, because I can't even make my own lunch. Like, I'm that useless. You know what I mean? Like and that's where, when I've been able to observe that from you and keep a business going, because dealing with the loss is remarkable in and of itself. Sticking around for the kids is remarkable in and of itself. Keeping the business going is remarkable in and of itself, and all the other normal adversities that happen along the way,
right?
And to juggle all of those is something. And I just want to know, like, what was your thought process? Because I mean, did you have time to grieve? Did you? What was in your mind?
Yeah, I don't know. Autopilot for
survival.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, survival for sure. I will say, like, prior to losing Dale and after the loss of the helicopters, she and I talked, like, what do you want to do? Like, and we both, she had said, and I agreed that, like, we have the option here to just kind of take the insurance payout, clear what debt we had, like, just kind of just be done, right? And go back to, like, who knows what, but whatever. And she was like, no, like, we shouldn't let this guy take that from us, We've built this thing and it's cool. Like, what we've got is neat. We're proud of it. And so let's, like, at least put it back together and not just, like, have a yard sale.
Go out on
like,
top
if we choose to sell it or separate from it, or, even if that meant, like, piecemealing out the aircraft and whatnot, at least it was, like, established and corrected and, cohesive.
Right.
Instead of, like,
we're not just
cut bait,
yeah.
know? And so that was our decision. That's what we were going forward with, prior to losing her. And so I guess, like, that gave me some comfort or, resilience or like determination, I guess,
mission,
where like,
yeah.
okay, like now I've lost her, but like same plan. Like, she was okay with that. I was agreed with it. That's what I wanted back before this new like assault on the senses that, and everybody's like, oh, you shouldn't make any big decisions like right after that. Like, okay, well, I got this big elephant in the room. I gotta do something with it, know? So
yeah, because and for everyone listening, 4 weeks in between the two, 5 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, so the dust had by no means settled
No.
from the accident. I mean, that was still, there was still plenty of dust in the air from that. Right about. They were about a month apart.
That doesn't seem right. It might have been a year and a month. Hey, I mean, my mental state was a little off, so I couldn't tell you.
I think it was Thanksgiving and Christmas.
That explains some things.
We'll double check, but I'm 99% sure it maybe was a year and a month. It was a year and a month.
No, it wasn't. You're right.
It was a month.
It was a month because we were waiting on the insurance payout. The insurance payout finally came. I picked up another aircraft, and we were actually able to my guys went and picked up the aircraft in Denver, and we're actually able to fly it over our service. So
yep, I remember.
Yep.
1 month.
Yeah.
My point in that is that you had no choice but to make big decisions.
Right.
Like
it was just
what are you going to do?
Right. I mean, you can't just like not decide what to do with the business. So then it just withers on the vine.
Right.
Know? So I had to either like run the damn thing or sell it. Like, well, you shouldn't make a big decision. I guess like they're alluding towards like selling it, but like running it was a big decision too. 'Cause how the hell do I do that with the 2 kids by myself?
Right.
So, and then if you do that and it doesn't work, now you're just good money after bad.
Right.
And like, okay, well now I might lose the house, and then what?
That's just as risky, if not more, than the alternative.
So it was a big decision. There was no like status quo, right? It was a big decision.
Yeah.
So
and that's what I think is so admirable about your story is like, and I mean this in the most positive, good way possible, but no one's coming for you. You know, like you had to.
They did. I mean,
you had, of course,
yeah.
tons of
So
help
there's
and all
that.
But it's not like you can. In other situations, there could potentially be an option of like
take some
bereavement
time,
leave, and keep the salary coming in while we grieve and mourn and all of that.
Right.
And I know you had help, but there's that another
I had
level
to create
of
that for myself with that help. My family and my guys basically created that for me, whatever they could.
Which requires a ton of, which requires a lot.
Yeah.
Just putting all those pieces together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was, I guess the one piece was she'd said, let's put the thing back together. So I was like confident to do that. And then, then the kids, it was like, I mean, again, at that point I could have just liquidated and done okay and figured something else out and, maybe even move closer to family and whatever. But I just felt like, well, again, back to that like romantic, I want to see what this thing can do. Mm-hmm. It hasn't killed me yet. Let's see if we can keep it going.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because you were talking about that earlier too, of like even with the current, and it's doing great now. It's been so fun to see, how much it's built and how much bigger your team has gotten, and now the multiple helicopters. I mean, just all of this evolution has been so cool to see. Yeah. But you had mentioned still though that there's this sense of like it's not done. Like
not at all, right? Like it's not done because I mean, we've been able to expand. We've expanded, since the beginning. Dale and I were able to expand it rapidly. We went from 1 helicopter to 2 within 2 years to 3 within 5 or 6 years. And plus we added that simulator, which is a really cool, thing. But we've reinvested everything back and more back into it,
right?
And so I'm still doing that, right? Which maybe I wouldn't have to if I didn't want to expand as quickly, but I guess what I mean by like that next level is getting me back to establishing a group that is that I can pay and actually employ, and they're not just there,
because helicopters are cool.
Well, and right, or flight credit, or I've got all kinds of deals worked out with these guys, but yeah, like actual established professional level positions that I could provide that then also provide for me separation from those things.
And then you
right
can be
now,
a business owner.
Right. Well, I could, maybe go back to flying and business development and the pieces that I really want to be doing, but also the things that I'm good at. Right now I'm doing a lot of things I'm not good at because nobody else is doing it.
You have to.
Yeah, and they're not getting done well, certainly, if they're getting done at all, because when you're trying to do a little bit of everything, you don't really get anything done. So that's the piece I'd like to eliminate, is feeling like, hey, the business can handle those things. I've got a guy for that. Those things are done. And also confidence, like back to that imposter syndrome that you mentioned, like, we're trying to cross all the T's and dot all the I's, but I know there's I missed at least a couple,
Right.
And so there's that, like, oh man, I'd really like to get a better handle on that stuff, So if the business is sort of self-sustaining in that way, and then I can sort of, determine where I best fit in it, that would be that next level.
Yeah, yeah. Where have you found, because 2 years-ish now, and there's been that these big evolutions since the adversities and things like that. Are you finding time to take care of yourself now?
I did, like I said, about a year ago is kind of where I said, okay, like I was getting sick, I was getting stupid, I was making mistakes, I was not comfortable flying, I stopped flying for a little bit, and I just said, like, this doesn't work. So, like, we'll see where that goes, but, like, I can't keep doing this, it's going to kill me. Quite literally, like, a lot of people say it'll kill me, and it does in terms of stress and all those things. But, like, I could literally get in that helicopter and not come home.
Right.
And it was like,
yeah, you're not allowed to have a bad day.
Starting to seem more likely than not. And so I said, I'm out, right? Park it. And it was in the middle of a big job, which kind of led to it. We were stressing about this job and everything else. And I went to my guys and I said, cancel it. And they're like, you got to be kidding.
That tells you.
Sorry. Like, it's not safe. I'm not doing it. And, so that's where they were like, oh, crap. Like, okay, we'll help, And so that's what we've been doing for the last year, where I've just, like, I don't go into work some days. I hey, Sundays, sorry, I'm not coming.
Yeah.
Well, this guy called. Can you come in? Nope. Sometimes I do, but then I don't come in on Monday.
Right.
Like I got to spend some time with the kids. I got to, do the things at home, just have some time to myself. So I'm doing that now. It's working, better than I hoped. It's like, I think it does help me to be more useful when I am there, and the guys have figured it out. And, you have that same thing that, I don't know if it's imposter syndrome, but, you're afraid as a new business owner, well, gosh, if I tell that guy, if I tell him no on Sunday, I'm going to lose that guy forever. And instead, it's like the opposite reaction where I go, oh, tell the guy no, or I tell him, I'm sorry, I don't work Sundays, and the guy goes, good for you. How about Monday then?
And then
like,
isn't that?
Well, look at that.
It's so funny. So especially early on, I'm like the yes man.
Yeah.
You say jump, I'm like, how high? I'll do, of course I do that. Oh,
right.
Yep, of course I do that. And,
Sure.
and I'm just like running myself ragged. And I'm so very much working on it. It's why I'm trying to learn from you, but establishing boundaries and trying to take care of myself a little bit. I still, and maybe it's, for me, honestly, it's probably because I'm insecure. I mean, it's honestly that simple, that I'm insecure. I'm too insecure enough to say no to people. So I say yes.
Sure.
There's been a few times when I've had the courage to do it.
Right.
And be like, I can't make it that day, or that's not going to work, or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're so right that the response is actually the opposite of what I'm scared of.
Yeah.
Where there's almost a new level of respect now of like, and it almost elevates even my credibility of like,
or even your business value.
Yeah, like
I better get in there. Yeah,
and you know this, but I scheduled my workouts now.
Yeah,
from 10 to 11 every day. I've got it's non-negotiable. I'm working out from 10 to 11.
Right.
And I had it on my calendar, but I'd schedule through it like crazy the first few. Like it shouldn't have even been on there.
Right. Get a nice idea. Yeah. Scratch that again. Yeah.
And then I started actually holding it and like sticking with it. And it's been so cool to see, like, now I'm booked out, 2-3 weeks for meetings, and people are, the response is so positive.
Yeah.
I have yet, though, to feel confident about it, which maybe that'll come.
And I think that maybe by having to work so hard, so much, so many areas, I just burnt. Like, I was burnt out, and not like, burnout and on top of it, the grief, the depression, like all that shit piled up, and it got me to back to the rock bottom idea of like, no way, I'm done, And I think without that, maybe I wouldn't
have been able to.
Yeah, just grind until there was nothing left of me.
Right. No,
but instead I hit a wall.
Because I think mine's similar. I haven't had the grief, but the anxiety, the depression, whatever, all the stresses of the business, it had to get to the point where I genuinely couldn't do it.
Right.
Like I'm not saying no because I want to. I'm saying no because I have to.
Right. I booked 25 hours and there's only 24 in the day. So
we're out. Literally impossible. It took that for me to at least have some.
And then the slip comes so fast. Like if you do go give in to the guy one Sunday, then since you worked last Sunday, this guy's at, and then it's gone again. So you gotta hold to that. And then I do think it actually helps the business, helps your credibility, helps your value. And honestly, it either works out or it doesn't, but it doesn't work the other way.
Yeah.
It doesn't work any better.
Have you noticed how an impact, if any, on the other components of your life? Like, your relationship with your kids or parenting and just even like your responsibilities at the house? Like, how does that impact?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's been big changes, right? Trying to work out all the logistics. So like, I don't necessarily see that impact because everything changed.
Yeah.
But, I do think like one of Dale's issues was just how much time and effort and energy and mental energy and that I had into the business. And, so in some level, again, like, I was confident in that she was okay with us like putting it back together, but I also felt like some guilt and some responsibility to like, fix that. And so, that's definitely helped a lot, to get me back with the kids. And I don't have a choice either, right? Like, I mean, I only have so much kid coverage, and then I got to be the guy there. But I love that part.
Of course,
it's great. So, it's still helping to recharge me, whereas before it was like some drain. I get home from work and she wants help with the kids, and like, okay,
right,
here we go again. Like round two. But
because that's one of the things that I wrestle with is like, especially as a dad, we have these responsibilities. We have to be there for our kids. We have to provide. We have to be providers and protectors, and all that. Like, I've got to make money to give my kids a good life. Like, and I feel an immense amount of pressure to do that, which is why we lose ourselves in our jobs and our businesses. Right. Believe it or not, if my wife's listening, it really is selfless. Like, we really are. I really am trying to, but it does take away the energy from when I'm home. And there's these balancing act, and that's where I'm interested in your perspective on it now that that you're in this different world now of those conflicting realities of needing to be there for them financially and have the business working, and then also needing to be there for them physically and emotionally and all of that stuff, because the two conflict.
They do, or they certainly can. And then also like taking care of yourself, which you feel like, well, there's just no time for that.
Right.
Because if I do that, I'm sacrificing one of those other two things. And that piece, I think, is false. Like,
yes.
You
100%.
have to take care of yourself. Then you go home and you're happy to be with the kids. And you're able to give to the business, and whatever time you invest in yourself, I mean, within reason, I suppose there's an upper limit on
an hour a day.
But, as long as you get some, the quality on the other two places is much better. So you have to do that. That has to be a non-negotiable. And early on, you think like, well, that's just not going to happen. I don't know. But
I'll just rally.
You have to. You can't. You won't for too long.
Yeah. How are you doing that? Motorcycle trips?
I lie to my guys.
Yeah. Love
it. No, I mean, I think they're supportive, but I just don't tell them. I'm leaving.
I'm booked up.
Right.
Yeah.
Where are you going?
I've got something going on.
Out, right? Like,
yeah.
They know, but like, and it has to be non-negotiable too, because, I just need you for a few more minutes, all right? Yeah, well, too bad.
Right.
Down the road. Like, you can get me for 20 minutes on the phone.
Right. Are you able to disconnect at all? Like when I remember a while back you were planning
I took a trip over the summer. Those big trips are tough, because like, they're supposed to recharge you, and what they do is make you not want to come back.
Right. Yeah. I was just telling you about my hunting trip off camera, and there's no cell phone service up there, which was just
you
so
have to have
amazing.
that. Yeah.
I have, it's good and bad. but my work's always with me. At least you have a helicopter. Of course, you've got to answer the phone. I mean,
It's
you're
all the
surrounded by
business stuff still goes,
and it's
yeah.
with you all the time. So it's like I can't get away from the thing in my pocket.
Right.
You know, it's been ringing while we've been talking. Even like
Yeah,
it's here.
same. Yeah.
And so, but when I had no cell phone service, it couldn't ring, and it was so great.
It's great.
And I spent I think I got like 2.5 days without cell phone service. But then you come back and you're behind again. And,
Yeah.
But it did actually, some of that stuff, some of the things that I would have responded to had I had service sort of solved themselves.
Self-solved, yeah.
And so that was a good lesson I learned of like, I don't have to it's not an emergency.
It's also like, I think it's
I don't know if you've been down there or not, but you should take your motorcycle down there. It's spectacular. Yeah. But again, no cell phone service.
Yeah.
And I was pretty uncomfortable about it for a minute. And then we decided we just own it. And phones were in the backpack and we just camped with the kids. And my takeaway from it is I've been trying to figure out how to articulate it, but that there were hundreds of micro moments with my kids that I would have missed had I been even just because you think it's just a quick check.
I better just look at it.
Yeah.
And then you get sucked into, there's that and this and that.
And next thing you know, you're on Instagram and then, know, whatever.
Right.
And without even like having the physical thing there, I sat by a fire with Nathan and bats were flying around. And every time he would see a bat, he'd be like so excited, like, Dad, bat.
Right.
And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, what have I missed?
Yeah.
Like, think about all the moments that we've interrupted on accident. And so I've been working on that diligently, and I'm so far from perfect about it. But like,
same.
The balancing.
I did, and one of the problems for me is that, some of the times when my phone rings, it's an actual emergency.
A literal emergency.
Either I have helicopters flying right now, and God forbid something happens to my guys in my helicopter, but that's a possibility. And I'm responsible for that. Or the emergency response that we do that at least is an indirect emergency, but it's still an actual emergency for somebody that we're supposed to respond to. And then if I'm not answering my phone, there's a level of guilt there.
Gosh, I didn't even think about that.
And so by necessity, I've had to put in a backup, right? Somebody else has to be reachable.
Right.
But that also, the benefit of that is it also created a barrier. So like now, if I don't want to carry my phone on Sunday, I know somebody will answer the phone. You don't have to. Yeah. And then, my barrier for that is one of my guys that's really good that, I do tell him where I actually am.
Right. He gets the real
if he
info.
really needs me, he can get me.
And you know that if that guy's calling you, you got to answer it.
Yeah, or he knows how to get to me even if I don't have my phone.
Right.
So.
Gosh, yeah, I didn't even think about that added layer of, because I volunteer on the fire department, which we could have a whole podcast episode about. Dale and first responders, all the whole world, which maybe we should. But I was telling my wife like I literally get pushed notifications of the bad shit that happens. Like every time a bad thing happens, not only do I get aware of it, but it like alerts me and goes off and whatever. But you add that to I'm a dad and a business owner and whatever, and I sometimes feel guilt of like I'm unavailable. I don't. It's hard to like know where that line draws. I never even consider. I totally forgot about that component of your business, and I can't imagine the pressure that would come when it's business and an emergency for someone. Yeah, and that like how in the world? So thank goodness you got those backups. In place.
I mean, there's still the piece of an actual internal emergency that I'm always responsible for. My guys are out flying, and but. So that's always there. But, also maybe there's not a whole lot I could immediately do about that. So, but it's always there.
Yeah.
But like I said, the upside is I've had to create a backup, which does actually create a barrier for just day to day, like Sunday. I usually wake up, unplug my phone, stick it in my pocket, go drink coffee, and I try not to look at it, but it's there.
Right.
On Sunday morning, I don't pick it up.
It's so smart.
I just leave the damn thing where it was. And, my guys know if they really have to get me, they can
Come knock on the door.
Well, yeah, or they can, catch Lucia's phone or whatever.
Right.
But, so they know. And then they also know, like, man, really trying not to bother Brandon on Sunday,
Give him some
And I
time.
do that, evenings too. Like, I got to put the kids to bed. I'm laying in bed with my kids. Like, quit calling me.
Right,
you know?
right. Yeah, I've been trying that too, and it has not gone perfectly.
Yeah.
But I've been trying to do like from 5 to 8.
Yeah, I don't get it quite that early, but yeah, same thing. Like,
You know.
hey, it's 7, guys. Like, if it's not, like, if it'll keep.
I'll text you back when I'm sitting watching
Yeah.
my junk TV here in an hour.
Yeah.
Give me a minute.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because what it seems like there's potential of, and don't let me put words in your mouth, but maybe for both of us, is that with some of this, like, I don't know, balance and boundaries and working on the business and getting these things in place to allow sort of that healthy layer of separation. I think that there's a world that could exist where we're really enjoying it. Like the enjoyment level is back to those high enjoyment levels.
Yeah.
And I think that creates also for sustainable businesses.
Yeah,
Like
I think so.
If we've got healthy stress levels
Right.
and healthy relationships with our companies,
Right.
the likelihood of both us and our companies
Yeah.
lasting, I think, is much higher.
I think that's absolutely true. Like, you'd kind of said, you're grinding. And I would have done the same. Like, my work ethic and just drive would have just kept me going until, like, I literally had a heart attack or was incapable of flying or got my certificate pulled or something. And, instead I hit that wall because of the external issues that happened, where then I tried to drive through that and it was just like, okay, this isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And so that forced me to kind of reevaluate how I do it and whatever. And I'm certainly not like perfect at it or even good at it, but it's better.
Come on, we're on a podcast. We can pretend like we're perfect.
Better, right? It's better. But you have to do it in that way that's sustainable because you will grind yourself out. And then the other piece that, that unicorn or that thing that I'm chasing that I talked about is the idea that then hopefully the business could get to a level where it can support enough help that, first of all, you have a layer. Like when the FAA calls me, I'm anxious and a lot of times upset.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm like responding to them in that way. And they've got me directly instead of, having somebody that helps with that goes, yeah, okay, you bet. We get a response together
Here's the
for you. I'll
form.
talk to the boss.
Right.
And then he goes, hey, boss, this is what's going on. Here's what, and the response goes back better for everybody, And so that's good in a way. It's not like I'm laying all this shit on somebody else's lap. They don't care like I do, which is a good
Nor
thing.
should they.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it might help me that they don't care as much as I do. So that's a good thing. And then, you get back to a place where, my skill set is being applied to the business in a good way.
In the proper way.
That's good for
Yeah.
the business. That's good for me. So that's a good thing. And then I think the last piece that I kind of want to talk about is like that imposter syndrome or, you said, insecurity, right?
Yeah.
And in my business, I'm sure yours in some way, but like as pilots, right? There's always a better pilot, right? And there's always this like, well, I'm the best pilot.
There's always
and
a better
like,
agency.
Yeah, and then the hot shot nature of aviation, right? Where it's like, you're trying to be the best, best fighter pilot in the Navy, sir, there's always that piece, and then you always wonder, like, well, man, there can always be more I can do on that level to improve myself as a pilot. But then you have all the business owner stuff to deal with as well, and it leaves you like that comes last, right? So you're like you're busy signing checks, keeping the lights on, and then like improving yourself as a pilot falls down here, and so now that insecurity creeps in, like, oh man, like, do I, should I even be doing this or am I, like whatever? And the answer is, yeah, hell
Of
yeah,
course.
you're doing it as well or, better than most. And so, you gotta, but it's hard to keep that out of your mind and also, continue to better yourself and perform. And so all of those pieces have to come. And so you've got to get help. You've got to be, taking time for yourself and you have to do it in a way that's like beneficial to the business and yourself. And if that means you can't do everything, all that shit will probably work out.
Then you can't. Yeah. Well,
some other way.
and being careful about what you give your energy to. It's like,
Right.
coming back to the way that people kind of rallied, with that accident.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny because especially in my world, and I'm sure you understand, but when people's campaigns are working, I don't hear about it because the campaign's working. Phone's ringing, website's live, whatever.
Sure.
Everything's going well. No one says a word.
Right.
When things aren't working, boy, do I hear about it.
Right, sure.
And it's emergent, and it's all in my face and stuff. So what ends up happening is my day to day normally is that what I get exposure to is the bad stuff.
Sure.
The things that and I've had some chapters where I've let it really impact me.
Sure.
And I'm like, gosh, what are we doing wrong? Like, oh my gosh, I'm working so hard. I'm trying all these things. And then I take a step back and I remember, oh yeah, well, there's 100 happy clients that haven't called
aren't
today
talking to you.
It's great.
Yeah.
There's 2 that are upset, whatever. But because I think, because I've had some chapters too where like, I don't know, pretty rapid business growth and it's my own doing, but put a spotlight on me sometimes that's good and bad, but it puts me way out of my comfort zone and like forces me to be a little bit vulnerable and authentic. When it's good, it's great, but when it's bad, it's not. And I find myself sometimes like caring a ton about the negative noise, or those things that happen, or like getting in my own head, like with the accident and thinking like everyone's gonna hate us. Here it goes. And then so how powerful to have the community rally and say, hey, man, you've got it. I just think it's something we all need to be better about is, A, paying attention to being careful about what we give our energy to, but then secondly, being the positive voice for people in our lives. Like nobody would have told you that they've been watching your journey and that they're supporting you had you not had the accident.
Right.
How nice would it have been to
people
have
did,
heard
but not
that
a lot.
without the accident, you know?
Yeah.
Just thinking.
I think, also, when people are upset at me, it's very visceral and it's very high level. So like, their response is, you are unsafe, or, you are illegal. I'm going to call the police. I'm going to call the FAA. I'm going to sue
It's
you.
like
right.
intense.
And it's big shit, like, I don't really want to talk to the police about what I did today. I don't think I did anything wrong, but
let's not go there.
But I also am having dinner with my kids and would rather not talk to the sheriff,
Right.
So they've been great. Like that's a bad example, but those are the threats that you get when somebody's upset with me. It's the cops, it's the FAA, it's the lawsuit, right? And so, we've had a lot of strife with our airport, which is like, you got to be kidding me, And so I fight that a lot. What am I doing wrong? What could I do better? And recently, again, the one individual we really fight with there was, extremely upset. Not sure why, but he kind of overstepped, I think, and the rest of the board was like, "Hey, wait a minute, maybe the helicopter people aren't the assholes." So it was like,
if all your relationships ended, you might be a variable.
And so that again was another like back to that community support of like, oh, hey, wait, maybe the whole board doesn't hate me,
right? But isn't it so easy to jump to that conclusion?
Sure, and
it's so
then
weird.
Now maybe where there's an opening to not have this adversarial relationship going forward.
Which how nice would that be?
And which helped my response or interaction, which
Right.
helped the interaction go better.
Right.
Which it was like, oh.
Because then you're approaching things too,
It's
and
like this missing piece all along.
You're not defensive,
Right. All of a sudden it was like, well, here's all we really need. Like, oh, are you kidding? That's
no
done.
problem.
Yeah.
It's
like, oh, could we have done that a long time ago?
I wonder. I need to other because we share that so much. I wonder if other business owners have that same thing of like, I don't know. You kind of wake up like, all right, who do I have to fight?
Yeah, right. Yeah, who's next?
When really most people are like, hey man, you're doing a good job.
You're like, oh, sorry.
Those were for the other guy.
Thought you wanted to talk.
Yeah. I don't have to have
that helps.
my gloves on.
Yeah, and if you can come into the next one not like that, it seems
and then
to
they
go
all
better.
go so much better.
Right.
Yeah. It's just a good takeaway from the conversation of like knowing that. I don't know, separating some of that negative noise because there's so much positivity. It's just that it's sometimes quiet.
Sometimes hard to find, and then you're going at the world angry from the last conflict. So it's hard to,
which is not a good way to approach it to
and
begin
it's
with.
certainly not a good way to find the positivity from the next
right. Now you're not in a mode to be like, hey, you're crushing it.
Yeah.
Good job.
No, I think that's huge, and giving your attention to even minutia too. Maybe not just like negative, but like I get drawn into. Returning junk emails and, just like shit that I just don't need to be doing, and you feel like, well, I got to clear all these emails out or whatever, or, you're looking over your partner's shoulder, your team's shoulder because, well, I don't know, maybe you shouldn't say it that way or whatever.
Right.
Who cares? It'll work out. Yeah.
100%. I literally today, I had a call. It was 15-minute scheduled call. with a client and going over some billing issue, whatever. And all of a sudden it's been 45 minutes. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you know what? You got
You're
it.
on it.
You win.
Yeah.
You know, yes,
Yeah.
I got to move on. You know?
With clients, but also your team. And that's that trust, right? Of like, hey man, like, I don't know, maybe you don't do it that well this time, but like you'll do better next time.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because for guys like us with our personalities, we have to get to a point where we had no choice.
Sure.
But then you learn that they can handle it. And
Yeah.
it might not be exactly how you would have done it or like exact
Right.
wording, but like it got done.
And then every once in a while they do something
better.
like, you're like, oh man, that was a good idea.
In my
I
case,
like
it's
that.
most of the time.
Yeah.
Most of the
more
time
and
it's
more.
better.
Again, like maybe back to that other, positivity thing. Like the more you let that happen, the more I'm like pleasantly surprised.
Right.
Like nice.
That
That was
actually went pretty well.
not what I was thinking. Your way was better.
Love that idea.
Yeah.
So we had an employee run a training today that I forgot about. And then she was like, I have my presentation at 1. I was like, oh, yeah. And I sat back and listened, and she crushed it. I was
Killed
like,
it.
how great.
Love it.
I got to sit and not talk for an
I'm outta
hour.
here.
It's
Yeah.
amazing, So, no, yeah, that stuff's it's awesome.
That's what it's about.
What's next? What's on the horizon? Because I know, coming back to sort of that, you had mentioned kind of the being an example to your kids, but also an example to you. And I know that, I've known you well enough to know that you've always got your eye on the horizon and the growth is continuing, the expansion is continuing. Talk to me about what are goals looking like right now? Is it sort of that next chapter with the business, or are there other evolutions that you're looking at?
I'm torn. The business is there's some things in the works that are like already on, happening. Kind of in process. And so, we're expanding our single pilot charter certificate to what they call a full 135, which will allow us multiple pilots for charter,
Cool.
Search and rescue, lift operations, which isn't really a part of that, but we're also doing that. So that'll just help take some of that off my plate and then allow for some more growth from my current pilots. The guys that have been working for me as instructors and tour pilots can sort of expand their skill set, repertoire, and offerings. So those things are kind of in the works, happening. So I wouldn't necessarily call those goals. There's some sort of next steps to that kind of follow along, like adding fixed-wing aircraft locally.
Oh, cool.
Maybe putting a helicopter elsewhere. We are adding some big aircraft, some jets to the certificate that won't be local. It's just kind of part of like this more like aviation oversight kind of move that we made a while back. So that's all happening. That's all good. I think on a personal level, I'd like to get back into real estate, which is what paid for flight school to begin with.
Yep.
I did remodels and apartments and things like that to put together a little cash to go to flight school. And, before I knew I wanted to go to flight school, but that's how I was doing things. So I'd like to get back to that. I'd like to create some housing here locally for our students and our mechanics and allow that to kind of build back a personal investment, outside of the business, but connected in a way.
Right.
So that stuff's going on. More like, I don't know, existentially, like I'm starting to like maybe lean back towards finding a way where the business is sustainable and can, run on its own, at least on some level. And that's the part I haven't kind of worked out is, how involved or uninvolved do I want to be?
Where's that line? Yeah.
But I am just like, I'm struggling with the school thing. I'm struggling with the, like back to the whole punch in, punch out, 9 to 5. Like we've escaped that, or at least, we're constrained by a different set of rules.
Yeah.
It's not like, hey, I have to be there at 9, but it's also not like I get out of there at 5, you
Right.
know? So, that's a different level of constraints that I'm more okay with. And especially now as I'm learning to manage that better, I'm going, hey, this is how people should be living
works,
more
yeah.
so than like the bell rang, like all the cartoons,
Right.
Yeah. So, and I kind of like don't want to train my kids to that. And yet then I drop them off at school and the bell rings and off they
and we're
go.
training our kids that,
and then
yeah.
I'm stuck in it too. And as an older dad, when my daughter graduates, I'll be pushing 60. And I don't think I'm going to live on a school schedule till I'm 60.
No.
So, I think I'm looking at trying to find like a rotating schedule, but it's hard to like I said, I could drop this whole thing, and get a little ranch or a sailboat or a bus and like do that, right?
Right.
I'm not
Homeschool
like,
the kids.
as great as that sounds for a little while. Like if you change your mind at any point, you're screwed.
Yep.
And I don't think it would be what I really want long term.
The goal is to get the business to the point that it can have the ranch.
Yeah, the problem is that then you're still mixed, right? So it's like what, week on, week off, or like, the ranch has to be local or whatever it is, right? The escape. Or it still is like a vacation place and another responsibility and another liability and another. So I don't know. That's what I mean by I'm torn. Like I'd like to go that direction somehow, but I'm not quite ready to just like full boat, like see you later.
Go start a homestead.
And I'm not sure that's a wise choice, even if I was ready. But like the in between is tough, man.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. I'm excited to see you figure it out.
Yeah, well.
Because I know you will.
Keep working on it.
Yeah. No, it's so awesome. Brandon, I want to thank you for so many different levels. First of all, thank you for giving me your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Really appreciate that. Thanks for letting me learn from you. Thanks for being such a good friend. But also, thanks for doing what you're doing. And for I've got my Inspired by Example shirt for you.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Because I really want you to know I watched you and still watch you, overcome all these adversities and the strength, that you've had for the last few years. So many people have also. And I think it's important that you know that people see it and that it matters and it makes an impact. And you and Dale have made a huge impact on my life. I'm better for knowing you guys. Miss Dale like crazy. Yeah. But I just want to thank you for, on so many different levels, from flying us to Uray to sitting here today, everything in between and all that stuff, it makes an impact. And I just think you need to know it because you're inspiring by example. And I hope you know how much I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And thank you to you too. Thanks for having me on and, letting me tell my story and for being a friend to us through all this. Business-wise, you've always been a supporter and put us out there and made some things happen for us. But just as a friend and a motivator, the things like that you are always, willing and enthusiastic to say, it goes a long way because, as we said, it doesn't come from everybody all the time. And even those that, feel it might not say it, but you do. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Brandon.